careful who you test. Give me your worst and you'll get my best. 'Cause I don't know how to back down, how to back down.
It wouldn't be the same. It would be quite difficult to sit down and do an editing session without a rum and coke, so that's what I've decided to do. Because today I'm going to be discussing the third and final part of my tilt shift series on how to edit and pull together those tilt shift images that we've taken in the field, the panoramics, you'll remember. So we're going to dive in, but it's not going to be a full editing tutorial. This is simply going to be how to pull those images together, a guide through of Lightroom, and how to quickly stitch those together. It does work in other platforms, of course, but today we're just looking at Lightroom only. Okay, so here we are in Adobe Lightroom. Now the first thing I'm going to do obviously is import my images, the ones that we're going to be looking at today. So I'm just going to do that in a different way to probably what you've seen before. I don't actually use this import button. The reason why is because I find that it adds images to your Lightroom catalogue and then effectively puts a duplicate copy onto your actual PC, and I work from hard drives. I just prefer to keep everything on the hard drive, you know, different catalogues on the hard drive, and also changes and TIFF files and things like this as well, all on the hard drive. So what I'm actually going to do is just select my folder here and add a folder. I'm actually going to go to my desktop, and you'll see here I've already set up a selection of images that we're going to look at today. First thing that comes up is this dialog box here with all the images that I want to import, and that looks absolutely fine. On the right hand side here, obviously you could apply any keywords. I've already got preset for this, so I'm not going to worry about this. If we need to check any images, we can zoom in and out here just to check things. But it's looking fine, I'll import those. Okay, so we have 21 images there that have installed, and you see here there's the folder added, and that's the way, if you added folders, it comes in here as a folder, tells you the drive it's on, and there's all the image links. So any changes we do here will go straight back to the folder that I imported them from. You know, it'll either create a copy or it'll change that exact file. That's exactly what we want to do. That's sort of how I like to work anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to color code these. So these ones here, you can press up, so shift and click, and I'm going to highlight these ones here as yellow, because what I want to do is I want to start working on them and change my sort time here to label color. And it's not going to move anything, but what I'm then going to do is I'm going to come through here and do the same thing with these ones. And nothing's going to move until we start to edit, but at the moment we're just going to make everything yellow so we know what we're doing. Well, they're the ones we're working on. The reason why I'm doing that is if I was doing, there was loads and loads of images in here, then or obviously the label color being yellow would bring them to the top, and they're the ones we're working on. So that's the first thing, sorting our images. Now what we're doing here today then is three things. We're going to be doing just a standard tilt shift shot image blend. So it's just where I've literally just focused the camera, and then what I've done is shifted the lens slightly up, moved the lens up to show more of the ceiling, you know, and then taken three brackets, and we're going to blend them together. So that's the first one here. So what I've done is press shift and click to select them all again, right click, photo merge, HDR. Now that brings up a little preview box just like this, and obviously depending on the time and the processing power of your PC, it will depend on how long this takes to process. Mine doesn't take too long. I do recommend, if yours is going slow, to grab yourself an SSD or upgrade your laptop to have an SSD. It certainly processes these images a lot quicker, as you've just seen. Now I always keep auto align ticked. I don't mess around with auto settings. That's just to apply like an auto, what Lightroom thinks kind of settings to the overall look. Deghosting we don't want to select either. For architecture photography, it's very rare you'd need any deghosting removed. That's just where you've got images that have, you know, moved between brackets, and we don't need to create a stack. So I'm going to merge those, and up the top left hand corner now you see creating HDR, and that's exactly what we want. Now I actually think Lightroom should change the name of HDR. It's actually just an exposure blend. It's taken the three raw files and then blended them together to create as a nice TIFF with all of the dynamic range of the three files into it. HDR reminds people of kind of like, you know, blowing your eyeballs out, burning your back of your eyeballs out style of photomatics and that kind of stuff. And I think maybe Lightroom should look at changing the name of that, because to be honest with you, it doesn't really make a nasty file. It's quite a good job, especially in 2020. You know, we're nearly 21 now, and I think actually the files that it produces are very nice and clean, considering how far we've come. You know, it was only 3 or 4 years ago where things were looking quite nasty in the processed file. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to press delete to get rid of these images. Now you can remove them or delete them from disk. That depends on you. I'm actually going to delete them from the disk because for me they're just a copy here on my desktop that I've taken from my drive. And that's the first one. So that's what we're doing there. Now what we would do is we can go into this file. I've just double clicked it here just to make it large. Looking at this file, I can go into develop now, and I could make any changes with, you know, bearing in mind we've now got more dynamic range, so I could play with things a little bit. And of course, as I've said in other tutorial videos we've done so far, subtleness is the key here. Don't overdo things. I love the texture. You look how good the texture is in interiors. That's a great one. And I always use vibrancy rather than saturation. I do have a video about over editing that I've done recently, so check it out in the link above. If you want to check that out in terms of tips and tricks on editing your files. That's it. That's all I'm going to do for that one. So that for me now would be a TIFF file that's ready to edit, and I would probably look to take that into Photoshop. Okay, future James jumping in here now. I wasn't happy with how the content came out, so I'm re-recording it for you guys in a future date, which is good. Yeah, look, I've done exposure blends, so now we're gonna look at blending together panoramics. So slowly building our way up. Let's have a little look at blending together some panoramics. So I'm actually going to skip these ones for a second, and we're going to go straight to the bottom here. And what I'm going to do first of all is just change the colour of this to green. I always change the images to green once I've done them. They're combined, and if you hover you can see it says hdr.dng. So it's basically telling me it's a TIFF file ready to edit, and I've made it green because I know then that's done in Lightroom. The next one I'm going to do is look at these ones here. So this one's a bit different. Technically I do have the brackets for this shot, but I want to show you an example of just a panoramic created with 3 images only. So straight, you know, basically straight out of camera and just combined. So photo merge, same thing here. We've selected them all, right click, photo merge, and this time underneath HDR you see panorama. So we're going to select that. And again, same thing, pops up with a different type of box here, little merge preview box. This time we have 3 options on the right, different kind of projections of what's going to happen. We have a like a warp boundary here which we're going to use, and then we have fill edges, auto crop, and all of these. So first thing is check the boundary warp. I find that it actually works really well if you've got it on perspective mode, especially in architecture. It tends to get those edges filled and straighten things up. Auto crop then you don't then need because there's no need for it, and settings the same as before. I'm going to do the settings myself. So let's merge that. Again, it's nice and quick. Nothing's taken too long here actually. It's pretty decent because again it's just 3 files, 3 exposures blended. That's going to create as quite a large file, as you're going to see, and then once that's blended I will delete these images here as well. Okay, now again there we go, it's created a new file for us just here. So I'm going to delete these brackets, get rid of them. That's done, and then here I'm just going to change this one to green because that's all now done. That's going to sit there next to this one, and then what I'm going to do is go into develop and have a quick look at it. First of all, you'll see it's not very straight, but if you look at crop first of all, look how large it is. It's actually a 6x4 when it's stitched together on a tilt shift. So this was a 17mm as it shows you here at the top. So portrait mode, the camera's in portrait mode like we've explained in the field, and then shot one on the left, one on the middle, and one on the right, stitched together. It's a huge file. I'm actually going to go for a 4x3 crop on this, I believe. I'm going to crop it in here. I'm going to get rid of some of that dead space on the window there. I'm going to have the wall, and I'm going to get rid of some of those windows. This is the thing using the tilt shift like this. The image resolution that I can now crop from is amazing. I'm losing lots around it, but as you'll see, I've lost absolutely no detail now when I've actually gone to do that. I'm just going to do my editing. Now, I don't mind outside the windows being a bit blown out in this particular image. That's why I've chosen it to show you. I am going to just increase my shadows. I'm going to bring them blacks down. Again, get that texture slider working because I do like that one. And then, yeah, I mean from here, we're not far off kind of being done again on this one. It's pretty straight, everything's lined up. There is 2 things that I've not spoken about, and that's lens corrections and transform. With lens corrections, with a tilt shift, unfortunately nothing applies. There is no corrections to apply. You'd have to do it manually. Nothing comes on. You can remove your ceramic aberration, but actually in this one there isn't any of that really. But any profiles, lens profiles, they won't come up here. So if there is any edges or straight lines that need sorting out or realigning, you're going to have to do it yourself in the transform tool, and you can see there it's not working at all. So actually what I'm going to do is just do a little bit manually, bend it with the rotate tool. I'm then going to use the vertical just to bring it back on itself, just so that we can actually see what's going on. And there's also a little bit of bending happening, just a tiny bit on the edge. So I'm going to go to manual. I'm just going to bend that, and I'm checking, what I'm checking here is the edge of frame with that bit of wood, and that's it, sorted. Go back up, go to basic, check my histogram, everything's fine. We've got a little bit of crushed blacks, and you can see here that's crushed blacks. If you hover, if you select it and then hover, it shows you that's the crushed blacks. It's telling me there's no crushed white, so I'm just going to increase that a little bit, and I think that's absolutely fine. So now that's me done. That's my TIFF file that I would save as a TIFF, and I would go from here and edit this now in Photoshop. I think that's where I'd do my further changes. Okay, finally then, what we want to do is we want to combine those two techniques, exposure blends, panoramics together, so an exposure blended pano. Lightroom is capable of doing this, and I'm going to show you now. The next file then we're going to look at is going to be this final one here. Now it's combining the two methods we've used so far. It's quite a delicate file, there's lots of information here and they're large. I'm going to select them all again, and what we're going to do is right click, photo merge, and this time we've done that one HDR, we've done panorama, and now we're going to do the final one HDR panorama. Now this one will take a bit longer to process, especially as I'm recording the screen at the same time, but when it pops up you get a nice projection of kind of what it's going to look like. Again, I'm going to use perspective mode, and I'm not going to choose any auto cropping. It's the same settings really. I may use a bit of boundary warp. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So play about with a boundary warp. I find that 100% usually would kill any dead edges. Other than that, I think it's a case of maybe cropping it when you get to the develop module. Okay, so here's my preview box. Everything's looking pretty straight. A little bit dark, of course, but actually here, again, boundary warp works. You see there, see the white edge just here, very, very subtle, but there it is. Boundary warp gets rid of that and fills that space in. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to press merge. And again, depending on your processing power, that's going to take a bit longer on this particular one, but that's exactly what it's creating. Okay, so that's all done. You see there's my file. I'm going to get rid of these raws now, and that gives us our 3 files. And this one here is my portrait. I'm going to go into develop module again, and I'm just going to look at kind of cropping things in. First thing I'm going to select is 4:5, give us a little bit more of a neater crop. I'm going to come into here on that one. I'm not sure I like the cropped chair there. We could come into somewhere like that to help get rid of it, but I like the ceiling. So unfortunately, I think that's the place it's going to have to be. The other thing as well is obviously we need to really sort out that exposure. So we can do that here. Also, the white balance on this one is not exactly as I saw it. Now, it was a bit more in the kind of green hues. So by pulling it down to a bit more blue, that's kind of more natural of what we were looking at when we were in the field. And that's it really. I mean, from this point on, everything is pretty much personal choice. Everything is up to you to do. I'm just going to look at lens corrections finally on here. Same thing as before. The profile correction won't apply. Transform will. I'm just going to make sure we're looking good. It does actually, auto there does actually straighten it out a little bit. And you can check if things are lined up here with the crop tool. And just check. And I've done a video before about the crop tool and how you can use it to your advantage. And I used this image in it as well in that video. So again, check the link in the description above if you want to just go and have a quick look at that. It shows you how you can use overlays, grid overlays, change these to kind of look at your files and make sure they're all lined up neatly. Apart from that, that's now my 3 TIFFs. That's us done. And there we go. So we've blended together an exposure blend here on the first image. We then done a panoramic, which is in landscape mode here on the right. And then finally on the left here, we did a portrait panoramic. So that's the 3 stitched together. And from this point on, obviously it's personal taste and what you want to do. So hopefully you've taken something from that. I hope you've enjoyed this video and it's pulled together some ideas for you. I hope you've enjoyed the tilt shift series. If I've got any other things, I think I've covered it all, but if you want to see more and there's any questions you've got, of course, leave them in the comments section below. If you need to see a fourth video for one reason or another, then of course suggest something below as well. If you want to see more, please make sure you hit subscribe, check the notification bell box as well, just to make sure that you're notified every time I upload new content. Usually I do a location video once a week and a sit down video once a week also. If you've liked this video, perhaps you can share it with a friend for me. Of course, tickle the like button, as we always say around here. Bye bye for now, see you soon.